Ladies and gentlemen, now today we're going to be breaking down some of the July updates to my Marvel Contest of Champions tier list for the best offensive champions ranked. So this list is all champions you play and not Alliance War defense. That's a completely separate list because, you know, some champions are amazing to play but rubbish on defense, and some champions are amazing on defense and a bit rubbish to play, so vice versa. Two completely different categories there. And before we start the breakdown of everything today, I want to give out the standard tier list disclaimer that at the end of the day, this is my rough guide to what I believe are some of the best and most valuable champions overall in Marvel Contest of Champions. The game is remarkably complicated. There are so many different modes of gameplay. You've got story, different variants, Alliance Quest, Alliance War, Arena, Dungeons, all sorts of different stuff, and so many different nodes and matchups. There are thousands and thousands of combinations, so depending on all the factors in play, you know, one champion might be completely irrelevant or one champion might be better than another. In a game like this, any tier list is never going to be definitive because there are so many factors and variables depending on who's the best in what scenario. So yeah, just use it for what it is, man. A rough guide to what I believe are some of the best champions. And if you always want to make the best and most informed rank up decisions, be sure to do a bit of research on YouTube. Think about, you know, what you're trying to do next and what some of the problems are and what characters you have that have the utility to overcome some of those problems. So yeah, just, you know, standard tier list disclaimer at the start of the video, boys. Now, we're going to start off today with the two new additions from the last month, which are Namor and the Invisible Woman. Now, straight up, man, Namor is going immediately into the Beyond God tier category, ideally with the requirement of having his awakened ability and having a lot of signature levels in this lad, and we'll talk about, you know, how important that is for a lot of kind of deep endgame Namor stuff in a little bit. But even unawakened, I would say Namor kind of falls in the God tier category, but it's really his awakened ability being so powerful and so unique that really places him in Beyond God tier for me. But Namor is ridiculous, man. There is so much burst damage on this dude. It is nuts. We uploaded a 6-star Namor gameplay. If you're a little bit unfamiliar with the numbers that you're going to see if you're playing Namor, man, he's just so crazy. Even my 4-star version of Namor can like punch up to variant level content and like deal with variant Mephisto, and that's mega, man. That is a really big punch for a 4-star rank 3 champion. So we've got a ton of amazing Namor gameplay on the channel if you want to see what all the fuss is about. Also, he's unblockable special 2 with stun. He has 6% missing health regen every time you throw a special attack, so especially if you've got a very like stacked or maxed out Namor, that is a lot of regeneration comparable usually to the content that you're playing against, and the lower you get, the more effective that regeneration is going to be. Also, the awakened ability. So Namor's awakened ability, and what makes him so great is he's the ability when he's attacking the opponent to absorb any damage and reflect it. Now, this damage and the percentage absorbed and reflected scales with the signature level, so to be able to fully absorb damage and reflect it, he needs to be fully maxed out in terms of his sig, and that's why sig stones are very important for Namor. Obviously, in the mutant class, this is a little bit competitive with Mega Red because he needs a lot of sig levels as well, but this is an awakened ability that can get through so many matchups, so many nodes. Like, any time that you are facing a chunk of what I like to call fun and interactive damage, so, you know, you're just taking damage for the sake of it, or like any scenario where you're taking damage when you're attacking into the opponent, not only can you completely mitigate that with the awakened ability, but then you pass all of that damage onto your opponent as well. It's just so insane, the effectiveness of this awakened ability for certain matchups like Korg, Electro, Mephisto, Dormammu, Magix, Havocs, Killmongers, the whole of Variant 2 as well. Any scenario where there's like degeneration, any nodes that like deal damage to you, if you're playing very aggressively, you can, you know, mitigate a lot of that node's damage and then pass it on to the opponent. So there's so much use and so much value in that awakened ability. So yeah, when he is in his like full maxed out criteria, Namor, I have no doubts in my mind that he's a Beyond God tier champion, but again, he does require like a lot of investment if you want to get him to that level where he can deal with like so many different matchups, because without his awakened ability and a lot of levels, he is a little bit more lacking in terms of the utility side, but he still has really good damage, even unawakened, so he's got that going on for him. And also, one thing to note as well is with the awakened ability, And also his regeneration, he's a great synergy as well with the Suicide Masteries. So if you're a big fan of those Masteries, man, he works very, very well with those. So that's something to note there. Then we have the second champion of this month. Initially, I had really low expectations for the Invisible Woman, and I've watched like a lot of gameplay on YouTube, and I must admit she has surpassed them a bit, but this champion still has her drawbacks. However, there are a few things that she can do quite well. Now, Invisible Woman has some pretty good damage output if you're playing without getting hit or using parry. You need to stay invisible by baiting specials and intercepting and stacking vulnerability on the opponent, and if you can do this, then you get some pretty decent damage output there. And also vulnerability on the opponent reduces their block proficiency as well, so it allows you to deal quite a bit of energy damage through the block of the opponent, which is a really, really nice kind of mechanic in certain matchups. So I think she has her uses, although you need to be very skilled to play Invisible Woman, and even if you have like one little slip up and lose your invisibility, then you're going to lose out on a lot of damage, which takes a while to build up. So this champion isn't without her drawbacks, and I think overall there are a lot of characters looking at the God tier and beyond God tier column that can do everything Invisible Woman can do and a little bit more, and don't have the drawback of needing to like intercept and bait out special attacks and essentially like remove parry from the equation. So yeah, Invisible Woman, you know, she's not too bad. And also you have this kind of fail-safe of being invisible. If you fail to dodge a special attack, then you've got like 2 seconds of invisibility before you know, turn visible again. So you're not going to like get hit, and then you have maybe a chance to kind of recover the matchup again. So Invisible Woman, she has her drawbacks. I'm looking forward to doing some gameplay. But again, I've watched a lot of really good stuff. From like Legacy, KT1, and also the Crystal Opening Whale, and a few other sources on YouTube and Reddit. And I've been reasonably impressed from what I've seen, and judging by the damage output, I think if you've got the skill, she kind of ranks around the high demigod tier. So at the moment, I don't really see any God tier, beyond God tier potential, but in the hands of a skilled player, I think she could be classified as a high demigod tier champion. So I've put that kind of skill requirement there. And also one thing to note is she can heal up a very small amount with the Suicide Masteries if you have willpower as well when Force Field is active, because the Force Field is going to soak up like a bit of the bleed and poison damage, and then from willpower it's going to like heal you even more than that per debuff. So yeah, that actually works out quite a nice synergy there with the Suicide Masteries with Invisible Woman. So, you know, if you like champions that, you know, play well with Suicide Masteries, this month is a very, very good month for you. And then we got a couple of promotions. So the first one, I did a big feature video on yesterday, and that's Captain Marvel Movie. Now, initially, I had Captain Marvel Movie in the God tier, and now I've moved her up to the Beyond God tier, because I just feel like in Act 6.2, and a lot of content recently, we are seeing so much value out of the brand new Captain Marvel. Her big amount of burst damage with binary ignition, and also the 12-second invulnerability of the awakened ability is just crazy valuable for a lot of like interesting nodes in Act 6.2. And even without those nodes, like testing her out in the final chapter of 6.2 where there's no global node at all, she's still doing really well with like the 150k to 230k health pools. So I think Captain Marvel Movie is just an absolute banger, man. She's shredding through so many different matchups, and if you're not really convinced that she's Beyond God tier champion and is swinging up there with the best of the best, like, watch yesterday's video and I'm pretty sure, man, it is 100% going to convince you there, or just YouTube search like Captain Marvel Beyond God tier, and we did a really good showcase yesterday, man. Like, I was so impressed by her performance in a lot of Act 6.2 content. So yeah, she's got a lot she can do with the invulnerability, poison immunity, shrugging off debuffs in binary ignition, spam, armor breaks, unblockable special too, and also she's quite valuable as well for like the Psychic Thorns node that we're seeing in the brand new Alliance War map, because she can heal like an insane amount of her projectiles with a special 1 or special 2. So yeah, a lot of really good stuff coming out with Captain Marvel Movie at the moment. And then finally, I decided to bump Psylocke up 1 tier from pretty useful tier to low demigod tier. I think after the kind of gameplay and performance, because I hadn't really revisited Psylocke in a couple of years, and I got the 6-star version. I took her out in some variant content, and she was just, you know, really fun to play, really effective against certain matchups like Nick Fury, where you can completely shut down certain mechanics. So, you know, if your opponent doesn't have an external source of power gain, and you just want to completely keep them at 0 power, Psylocke, you know, she can be a really, really good option for certain matchups, but I don't think, you know, she's the overall best power control champion, but I think she's having more and more uses as time goes on, and the damage certainly isn't too bad, and you can ramp that up a little bit more with the awakened ability. So, you know, I think Psylocke does deserve to be in the low demigod tier. Then finally, I just want to shout out a load of champions that I've seen performing really well this month for the release of Act 6 Chapter 2, and the first one, who's so popular at the moment for the champion final boss, is She-Hulk. She's a crazy counter to that boss, man. Works really, really well, especially with the timing of a heavy attack, because a heavy attack, if you have the opponent in the corner, is so quick that you can just throw it very consistently off the end of like a 4-combo heavy attack, and it just works seemingly like every single time. There are a lot of really good videos of She-Hulk versus the final boss there, and I've seen her being used a fair bit, so I do think she's still a very solid god tier champion, maybe some beyond god tier potential, but I've yet to be convinced of that yet. But I think she's doing really, really well in the god tier, been so useful for so many people this month. So yeah, I think She-Hulk's doing really well. Also as well, for the final champion boss and a few other bits and bobs over 6.2. We got Captain America Infinity War and Symbiote Supreme for that final fight. Both of those champions are absolutely insane. They are an absolute godsend. So yeah, love those. Cap is so good for the final phase, man. If you're a little bit of a scrub like me and can't do those like dash in, dash out dexterities on the champion special one, and Symbiote Supreme just shreds like the first 90% of that fight. Then we've also got some, you know, traditional Beyond God tiers just tearing it up all throughout Act 6.2, like your standard Ghost, Aegon, Corvus Glaive, Omega Red, Domino. Like, these 5 champions across various chapters have so many crazy synergies with all sorts of the new nodes as well. Like, it seems like Ghost is just brilliant for absolutely every chapter. Corvus is swinging very, very hard as well, especially with his cheat death mechanic against nodes like Icarus, and Aegon like shrugging off nodes like Icarus as well. I've seen a Mega Red like sustain crazy well for Brian Grant, man, and I know he's trying to do 6.2 itemless as well, and in my personal experience, Domino and her heavies have been mad. Archangel is crazy good as well for certain chapters. He's been my MVP when I did my free-to-play run on Whale Milker 27. He got me through quest number 4 just seamlessly. He was so good for dealing with that node. So yeah, Archangel's just brilliant in any matchup where you can bleed and poison the opponent. I think Hyperion overall is probably one of the biggest 6.2 MVPs. I just see him used absolutely everywhere. He's just got some insane power gain, which is so useful for all sorts of nodes, and also just some crazy burst damage output as well. So Hyperion is swinging really, really hard. Also, he was my option for the 6.2 Sinister, and he worked an absolute treat there. Also, Nick Fury, if the opponent can bleed, and like on the Do You Bleed paths, I've seen people having a lot of success with Nick Fury, because he's the strongest like bleed champion pretty much in the game aside from Domino there, and the easiest and quickest one to get into, I would say. Quake, I've seen a lot of really good Quake gameplay across 6.2, especially on the final champion boss as well, for some crazy Quake players. Also, Morningstar having a lot of value if you ramp her up for the final champion boss. I've seen some really good takedowns, especially in the final phase, because she's like 50% block proficiency, and also when you're dealing damage, you're also regenerating, so it gives her a good amount of sustainability if you've got like a rank 4, rank 5 in that final phase. So yeah, mad love to Morningstar there. Medusa was fantastic on my free-to-play account, especially for the 6.2 Mr. Sinister. Cull Obsidian, if you want to go full Cull, he works a certain paths, and if you get him ramped up, like, you know, get above like 5 of the charges, you're going to kill everything in like 25-30 hits. He actually works surprisingly well for the Icarus chapter as well. I'm thinking of releasing some more Cull Obsidian gameplay, but it was only a week and a bit ago since we did a full feature video on Cull, so, you know, might wait a little bit longer for that one. Also, Killmonger with a Void synergy is very fun for Icarus. A little bit of a cheesy gimmick one, but I had a really good time playing around with that one. Heimdall is just so valuable for any poison immune champion with the Fury synergy for the Axe 6.2 Mr. Sinister, and just for, you know, the cheat death in certain scenarios as well. Like Heimdall is just really good for a synergy, but not really a champion that's played, to be fair, but the synergy is awesome. And also OG Hulk. I've seen a lot of people using what is it, the OG version of Hulk for Mr. Sinister, and just kind of going balls to the walls, like stunning him in the corner, maybe, you know, chucking in an invulnerability synergy, I think with Thor Ragnarok as well, and you can have a little bit of fun with that. But I think Hulk has been very useful to quite a few people for getting through that Sinister fight. However, I'm sure there are a few other champions that I've missed that have been really doing a number for a lot of people in Act 6 Chapter 2, but that is the tier list update for July. So hopefully you did enjoy today's breakdown and also update, ladies and gentlemen, and if you did, please do smash that like button. That'd be greatly appreciated. Aside from that, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day.